जो टेट्रापॉड्स में सर्वाइकल वर्टेब्रे कहाँ पे प्रेजेंट क्या होता है, नेक मूवमेंट की हमने बात की थी, फिर अटलस और एक्सिस की बात करी थी, ठीक है। ठीक है, यहाँ से हमने स्टार्ट किया। ओके, so the thoracic region has what? Thoracic vertebrae. So what it does, it articulate, these articulate with the ribs, ठीक है, वो ribs के साथ articulate होती है. So the lumbar vertebrae are present in the lumbar region, are more robust than the vertebrae of the other regions. So the sacral vertebrae are often fused to form what? Sacrum. It is also fused with the pelvic girdle. Okay, in birds the structure is called as what? Synsacrum. It is present. It is also formed by the fusion of large thoracic vertebrae and all lumbar, sacral and few caudal vertebrae. So synsacrum in turn is fused with the pelvic girdle. Pelvic girdle के साथ जब वो fuse हो जाता है, so in order to support what? Bipedal locomotion. ठीक है, बाइपीडल लोकोमोशन मतलब जो दो पैर में जो चलते हैं वो, उसको हम क्या बोलेंगे? बाइपीडल लोकोमोशन. ओके, सो वो इसके लिए वो फ्यूज करते हैं विद द पेल्विक गर्डल. ठीक है, पेल्विस पता है, ठीक है, उसके साथ जब वो फ्यूज होता है पेल्विक गर्डल, उसके वजह से क्या होता है? बाइपीडल लोकोमोशन के लिए सपोर्ट होता है. ओके, सो ये है skeleton of the bird shows what? Sternum, syncranum, ठीक है, सिंसैक्रम, ठीक है, ये सिंसैक्रम ये देख रहे हैं, इसके साथ फ्यूज्ड रहता है वो. ओके, स्कैपुला है, वी हैव क्लेविकल, स्टर्नम, स्टर्नल रिब्स, देन पाइगोस्टाइल, फिर यूनिकेट प्रोसेस ऑफ द कॉस्टल. ठीक है, वी कैन सी स्कैपुला एंड sacrum. ओके, सो caudal vertebrae form the tail region and may be used in the tailless animals. ठीक है, सो ये याद रखना है आपको, द caudal vertebrae form the tail region and may be fused with the tailless animals. even अगर जिनके पास tails present नहीं है, so एकदम ये fuse हो जाती है tail region के साथ. okay, so the arches spines of the vertebrae get progressively shorter in this region. ठीक है, so ये जो arches and spine है vertebrae में, बहुत छोटी छोटी होती जाएंगी. So in frogs and toads, the terminal vertebrae forms the urostyle. Okay, and in birds, the last 4-5 vertebrae fuse to form what? Pygostyle. ठीक है, okay, so in frogs, toads and terminal vertebrae form what? Frogs and toads में क्या होता है? Urostyle. And birds last 4 to 5 vertebrae fuse to form what? Pygostyle. देखिए ये pygostyle यहाँ पे देख सकते हैं. ठीक है, यहाँ पे से present होती है. Okay, so in apes and humans, the last 3 to 5 caudal vertebrae fuse to form what? Cochlegeal or tailbone. ठीक है, हमने देखा था it is vestigial part of the human body. Okay, so the regions of the vertebral column and the specialized vertebrae in animals. ठीक है, these are regions of formed in this. ठीक है, in this figure you can see the invertebral cartilage, disc made of fibrous tissue and remnants of the lower part. Okay, so we can see over here. So cervical, ये numbers याद रखने हैं पे. ठीक है, cervical कितने हैं, thoracic कितने हैं and lumbar कितने हैं. Okay, so अगर मैं यहाँ पे बोल रही हूँ, so ये body, transverse foramen, vertebral foramen, arch है इसको बोलते हैं, and spinous process. ठीक है, इसमें वो एकदम पूरा ऐसे एकदम stack रहते हैं, जैसे you can see over here. Okay, so this is transverse process, this is spinous process. Appendicular region, appendicular skeleton. ठीक है, हमने ये डिस्कस किया था, हमने आई गेस पहले के स्लाइड्स में. Just a second. Okay, we'll just continue with further. Okay, so ये सब हमने देखा था. Now we'll look at what? Appendicular skeleton. So most of the vertebrates have 2 pairs of appendages and anterior. ठीक है, क्या है, two pairs of what appendages है at the anterior pectoral and the posterior, which is the pelvic neck. Okay, fishes have paired fins and other vertebrates have joined limbs. ठीक है, so fishes के पास क्या है, paired fins होती है, ठीक है, which is called as pterygia, and other vertebrates have joined limbs, also called as what, podia. Okay, so during embryonic development, the paired appendages of the fish appear as horizontal folds, and the limbs of the vertebrates appears as what, buds. Okay, so ये याद रखनी है हमें कि जो embryonic development के time the paired appendages of the fish appears what, horizontal folds. Okay, so pair limbs of the vertebrates appears as what, buds. Okay, so the skeleton of the paired appendages, namely forelimbs, hind limbs, articulate the support by anteriorly located pectoral girdle and posteriorly located pelvic girdle, respectively. ठीक है, ये जो forelimbs and hind limbs है, okay, so articulate the support by anteriorly located at the pectoral girdle. ठीक है, पेक्टोरल गर्डल में लोकेटेड है एंड पोस्टीरियर लोकेटेड एट द पेल्विक गर्डल, हाइंड लिम्स की मैं बात कर रही हूँ, ठीक है, respectively. Both the pectoral and pelvic girdles and skeleton of the forelimbs and hind limbs collectively constitute what, appendicular skeleton. ठीक है, appendicular skeleton किसको बोलूंगी, both the pectoral and the pelvic girdles of the skeleton of the forelimbs and the hind limbs constitute what, appendicular skeleton. Okay. Now next, so pectoral girdle is made up of both dermal and endochondral replacement bones. हमने endochondral bones की बात की थी, ठीक है, so pectoral girdle is made up of what, it is made up of both dermal and endochondral bones. ठीक है, so pectoral girdle consists of two identical, in some vertebrate species each part of the pectoral girdle has three components which consist of what, clavicle, scapula and coracoid. Okay, क्या क्या है pelvic pectoral girdle में, three components है, clavicle, scapula and coracoid. So in humans each part consists of clavicle and scapula. ठीक है, humans part consists of clavicle and scapula. Some mammalian species such as the dog and the horse have only scapula. ठीक है, example में याद करना है. So each part of the pectoral girdle also has acetabular cavity for the articulation of the head of the humerus bone of the forelimb. Okay, so the pelvic girdle is made up of two dermal bones, a dorsal iliac and a ventral ischiopubic part. ठीक है, so ये pelvic girdle is made up of two dermal bones, ये याद रखना है कौन सा, dorsal iliac and ventral ischiopubic part. So it is composed of two identical appendicular hip bones. Okay, so इसमें क्या है, क्या याद रखना है हमें, each part is formed of ilium, ischium and pubis. So the two parts join and orient together to form what, a ring. Okay, so each part of the pelvic girdle contains a glenoid cavity which articulates with the head of the femur of the hind leg. Basically क्या है कि जो pelvic girdle है, कौन सी, एक कैविटी मतलब ऐसे एक होल टाइप रहेगी, ठीक है, तो उसमें उसको मैं क्या बोलूंगी, ग्लिनॉइड कैविटी. ग्लिनॉइड में क्या है, बेसिकली ग्लिनॉइड कैविटी व्हिच आर्टिकुलेट्स द हेड ऑफ द फीमर बोन का जो हेड है, ठीक है, ऑफ द हाइंड लिम्ब. तो ये इन दोनों को मिला के मेरे को क्या मिलता है, ग्लिनॉइड कैविटी करके मिलेगी. सो द पेल्विक girdle also has the pelvic spine which consists of sacrum and coccyx. ठीक है, ये पता ही है सबको, ठीक है. The extremities of the vertebrate limbs are typically pentadactyl, being provided with the 5 digits each. So penta की मैं बात कर रही हूँ, what penta would be 5. So ऐसे याद करना है. So extremities of the vertebrate limbs are typically pentadactyl, being provided by the 5 digits each. So the vertebrae 4 and the hind limbs have similar joints and similar number of skeletal elements. The general pattern of the skeleton can be listed in this table. Okay, so we'll see this table. Okay, So the similar plan between the anterior and posterior part of the appendicular skeleton. Okay, so इसमें basically क्या है, the anterior part of the appendicular skeleton को मैं क्या बोलूँगी, shoulder joint, point of attachment of the pectoral girdle with the forelimbs. So head of the anterior bone, humerus भी बोलती हूँ, of the forelimb. So upper arm bone of the forelimb, single bone humerus, lower bone radius or ulna of the forelimb, two bones, radius and ulna, posterior part of the appendicular skeleton, hip joint, point of the attachment of the pelvic girdle with the hind limbs, head of the anterior bone, upper bone of the hind limb, femur, lower bone of the hind limb, two bones, tibia and fibula. Okay, so similarity हम देख सकते हैं, similar plan between the anterior मतलब आगे, and posterior part of the appendicular skeleton. ठीक है, basically हैंड्स एंड लेग्स की यहाँ पे बात हो रही है, तो कौन सी सिमिलैरिटी पोजीशन हम देख सकते हैं, ठीक है. सो अपर आर्म बोन को फोरलिम्ब को कंपेयर किया है, अपर बोन हाइंड लिम्ब को, व्हिच इज वन ऑफ द स्ट्रॉन्गेस्ट बोन्स फीमर. ठीक है, तो हमने पेक्टोरल अटैचमेंट की बात की थी, पेल्विक गर्डल अटैचमेंट की बात की थी, शोल्डर जॉइंट एंड हिप जॉइंट को एकदम कंपेयर किया है इसमें. ठीक है, इसमें क्या कंपेयर करेंगे, बिटवीन द अपर point of attachment between the upper arm bone humerus and lower arm bone radius and ulna, elbow joint, knee joint से यहाँ पे compare किया है. Then we have wrist carpal bones and tarsals. ठीक है, palm में metacarpal bones and metatarsal bones. Then you have fingers, phalanges and phalanges. Okay, toes and fingers को हम क्या बोलेंगे, एक ही word है, which is phalanges. Okay, so ribs and sternum. रिब्स एंड स्टर्नम की बात किया जाए, स्टर्नम विच इज द चेस्ट बोन हम बात करते हैं. ठीक है, सो रिब्स आर फाउंड इन द thoracic region of the most of the vertebrates. So they are set as a pair of slender curved bones that are attached to vertebrae at one end of the sternum and at the other end. So they are the sets of what, paired slender curved bones that are attached to vertebrae at one end and to the sternum to the another. Okay, so ribs have a bony vertebral part and attached to the breastbone or the sternum by a ventral cartilaginous or a bony sternum portion. ठीक है, ठीक है, so ribs have a bony vertebral part which is attached to the breastbone or the sternum by the ventral cartilaginous or a bony sternal portion. So the ribs together with the vertebral column and the sternum form what, skeletal cage. ठीक है, and encloses and protects the organs of the thorax. Thorax मतलब वो जो upper region. Okay, so during the course of vertebrate evolution of ribs first appeared in gnanostomes. ठीक है, gnanostomes की हमने बात की थी आगे, gnathostomes की हमने बात की थी. ठीक है, there are two types of ribs, the dorsal intramuscular ribs and ventricular or hemal ribs. ठीक है, so the dorsal ribs grow as the extension of the vertebrae and extend into the horizontal septa. Septa would be the division. Okay, so dorsal ribs that occur in the elasmobranches and amphibians are short and incompletely developed. So basically क्या है, जो dorsal ribs है ये elasmobranch and amphibians में so बहुत छोटी होती है और incompletely developed, मतलब बहुत डेवलपमेंट उसका कंप्लीट नहीं होता. सो हाउएवर दे आर वेल डेवलप्ड इन amniotes. ठीक है, कहाँ पे डेवलप्ड है वे, इन amniotes. ठीक है, द dorsal ribs established the contact of the vertebral column and sternum surround the body. A typical dorsal ribs with the two heads, the capitulum, which is the rib head that attaches at the center of the vertebrae. ठीक है, क्या है a typical dorsal ribs, क्या है, two heads है. So capitulum, capitulum मतलब a rib head that attaches to the centrum of the vertebrae. ठीक है, centrum से अगर उसको attached है तो उसको capitulum बोलेगी. And tuberculum क्या है, tuberculum hip, which attaches to the transverse process of the vertebrae. Okay, so two heads of the ribs enclosed in the space between them, it is called as vertebro-arterial or vertebra-arterial canal or foramen, which of the vertebral artery passes. ठीक है, vertebral artery वहाँ के वहां से पास हो. So enclose in the space between them. So ये जो space जो between them उसको मैं क्या बोलूंगी, ये जो हेड के जो स्पेस अगर उसको एक साथ अगर मैं रखूं, ठीक है, एक स्पेस बिटवीन देम, उसको मैं स्पेस को क्या बोलूंगी, वर्टेब्रो आर्टेरियल और वर्टेब्रा आर्टेरियल कैनल. इससे क्या गुजरती है, वर्टेब्रल आर्टरी पासेस. ओके फाइन. Okay. So the ventral and or hemal ribs seem to have arisen from the hemal arches. So they also encircle the body but are located inside of peritoneal cavity. So ventral ribs are present in the most of the teleost fish, ganoid fish, dipnoi. Both of the dorsal and the ventral ribs are found in most of the teleost fish. So in most of the reptiles, the birds and mammals, the ribs are attached by the movable joints. Only the thoracic vertebrae, the in birds, अभी birds में क्या होता है, the entire rib is ossified. Ossified मतलब एकदम hard हो जाती है and firmly attached to the sternum, while the mammals in the sternal part is what, cartilaginous. Okay, so the ribs which are short, which are not directly attached to the sternum, but the other ribs are what called as the false ribs. So in humans, false ribs कहाँ दिखती है, जो rib cage होती है 8 to 10 in humans. Okay, so the false ribs are found in the crocodiles as well. Okay, so the ribs that are not attached to the sternum but are free is called as what, floating ribs. For humans में कहाँ पे दिखेंगे वो rib cage में 11th and 12th position. So 8th and 10th हमारा false ribs है and 11th 12th में हमारा floating ribs है. Okay, देखो हमने ट्यूबिकुलम की बात की थी एंड कैपिटुलम की बात की थी. फिर हमने बेसल सेंट्रम, देखो यहाँ से आ रही है एंड कैपिटुलम यहाँ से, ट्यूबिकुलम से यहाँ से आ रही है. ओके, सो फिश एंड एक क्या है, एक फिश वर्टिब्रे एंड सी इज द डबल हेडेड रिब ऑफ द वर्टिब्रे. ओके, so sternum is a shield or rod-shaped bone or group of bones found in the mid-ventral side of the thorax of the vertebrates. So the sternum is also commonly called as the breastbone. So in amniotes, the ventral end of the ribs are attached to the sternum. So the sternum of birds, as we have read in the previous course, in the broad and develops a ventral keel-like projection. Keel-like projection ऐसे एकदम free surface areas का एकदम सब बड़ा होता है and provides a surface of attachment of the wing muscles. ठीक है, as we all know muscles need something to attach onto the bones. ठीक है, तो एक surface attach हो जाता है किसके लिए, wing muscles के. Okay, so sternum is usually present in the vertebrates and it is adapted according to the type of the locomotion. So snakes which have lost their limbs also have lost their sternum. Okay, so in the present section, we have discussed the general features of the skeletal system in vertebrates. In next section, हम क्या compare करेंगे, salient features of axial and appendicular skeletons of two vertebrate tetrapods, किसका, frogs and rabbit. Okay, the frog shows the adaptation of terrestrial life while still maintaining a partly aquatic life, while rabbit, a mammal, it is fully terrestrial. So the skeleton of both these vertebrates are suitable and adapted to their lifestyle. Okay, so this, okay. Axial skeleton of a frog and a rabbit हम discuss करेंगे अभी. Okay, so axial skeleton की मैं बात करती हूँ. Axial skeleton what, कि स्कल एंड वर्टेब्रल उसमें प्रेजेंट होगा. ठीक है, एक्सियल स्केलेटन में अगर मैं बात करूँ तो, सो इन अर्लियर सेक्शन वी हैव स्टडीड द जनरल फीचर्स ऑफ द एक्सियल एंड अपेंडिकुलर स्केलेटन ऑफ द वर्टेब्रेट्स. इन दिस सेक्शन हमने क्या, विल स्टडी द ग्रेटर डिटेल्स ऑफ द एक्सियल स्केलेटन ऑफ द फ्रॉग and rabbit by comparing the structures of the skull and the vertebral column. So we'll examine this feature. So the skull or the frog, rabbit, the skull of the frog. The skull of the frog is interesting for several reasons. क्या interesting होगा? So it's simple in structure with fewer number of bones. Okay, बहुत कम bones में present. So the areas of ossification compared to the other vertebrates, ossification मतलब say fusion, ठीक है? So it is broad and flat, consisting of cranium, sense capsules हमने देखा था last lecture, ठीक है? Large eye orbits, jaws, hyoid apparatus and cartilage of the larynx, ठीक है? So we'll see about these structures. Okay, so अगर मैं frog skull की यहाँ पे देखूँ तो we have maxilla, warmer, we have squamosal, premaxilla मतलब maxilla के आगे होता है. Okay, we have nasal, frontoparietal, आगे और डिस्कस करेंगे इसके बारे में. Okay, the cranium of the frog is anterior posteriorly elongated and it is formed just of 6 bones. ठीक है, only consist of 6 bones. The posterior end of the cranium is what it is called what? Occipital, and they consist of large aperture called as what? Foramen magnum. It is surrounded by a pair of bones, exo-occipitals, which bears 2 bulges, and it consists of occipital condyles. For articulation of the atlas हमने देखा था, which was the first bone, and the cervical vertebra. ठीक है, ये इसके काम आता है. So the roof and sides of the cranium are covered by a pair of composite bones called as the frontoparietals. So it composed of what? Cranium, which is covered by a pair of composed bones. So the roof and the sides of the cranium, it is covered, मतलब वो उसको covering होती है, pair of composed bones. उसको मैं क्या बोलूँगी? Frontoparietals. Frontoparietals, I think we have. ठीक है, see, we have a frontoparietal over here. ठीक है, so basically क्या बोला है? The roof and sides of the cranium are covered by a pair of composed bones. ठीक है, so roof and the sides of the इसमें it's covered by a frontoparietal. Okay, so the front end of the skull, there is a single ring-shaped bone, the sphenoethmoid, which is then covered by the dorsal side by the nasal bones, and it is only visible at a triangular bone at the dorsal side. So on the ventral side, the sphenoethmoid bone is covered by a dagger shape called as pharasmoid bone, which forms the floor of the cranium. We have over here. See, we have parasmoid bone and a sphenoethmoid. ठीक है, sphenoethmoid bone अगर हम देखा जाए तो एक ऐसे एकदम see, which covers the dorsal side by the nasal bone, which is only visible to the triangular bone of the dorsal side. We have a triangular bone over here. Okay. Now, next. Okay. So क्या होता है? Each paired auditory capsules of the bone skull is situated at the posterior lateral side of the cranium. Each auditory capsule consists of only one bone called as the prootic. Okay. So each auditory capsule consists of only one bone called as the prootic. So the rest of the auditory capsule is covered by the membranes. So the middle ear has a cartilaginous extra shaped bony stapes that transmits the sound waves into the internal ear. ठीक है, so ये basic है. stapes basic में हमने देखा था. ठीक है, the olfactory capsules are found at the anterior to the cranium. Each olfactory capsule is covered by the nasal bone above and a vomer bone below. ठीक है, olfactory capsules में क्या देखा था? एक nasal bone ऊपर रहता है and a vomer bone at the below. So the two bones are bound by the membranes to the cranium to each other. A space located anterolaterally on the each side. The cranium forms a eye orbit, which contains the eye ball. वो hollow part of, ठीक है, hollow part of the skull होता है. ठीक है, so उसके अंदर हमारा क्या होगा? हमारा eye ball, which contains the eye ball. The eye socket is bound to the outer borders of the bones at the upper jaw. Okay, by the bones of the olfactory capsules. ठीक है, olfactory अगर मैं इसकी बात कर रही हूँ मैं smell की. ठीक है, and the cranium on the inner margin of the bone of the auditory capsule, the floor is covered by a tough membranes with a bulge buccal cavity. ठीक है? Okay, so the upper jaw of the frog is a horseshoe shape. कैसा है? एक horseshoe shape का. So it forms with the outer margin of the skull anteriorly and laterally. Okay, the upper jaw, it is made up of two halves united in the front and the free end. So each half of the upper jaw consists of what? Anterior premaxilla, a middle maxilla, and a posterior quadrato-jugular. Okay, so ये याद रखना है, consist of what? Three premaxilla. Premaxilla मतलब आगे होगा maxilla के, ठीक है, middle maxilla and a posterior quadrato-jugular. Okay, so the two halves of the upper jaw are united premaxillary. The upper jaw is immovably fixed to the skull and the side three bones. These three bones क्या है? Consist of a bar-like palatine which consists of connects the maxilla to the sphincter. ठीक है, हमने देखा था sphincteroid. ठीक, and two other bones which are present at the posterior end each side of the upper jaw connected to the auditory capsule respectively. ठीक है, posterior end का हम लोग जो बोन्स की हमने बात की थी, on the each side of the upper jaw फिर कहाँ से कनेक्ट होता है? वो ऑडिटरी कैप्सूल respectively. ठीक है, the T-shaped squamosal bone, it is present on dorsally.